Meeting of the Littleton Affordable Housing Trust. It is Tuesday, May 27th. It's 6:30 p.m. And we have a quorum this evening with Angus, Marianne, Sue, Bartlett, and myself. So on this evening's agenda, we have two different items. The first one is to be able to discuss the follow-up from the small grant program for homeowners in Littleton, SGP number 8, and that is being tabled, as I understand it. And then we will be talking with MHP in reference to Durkee Farmhouse. So I did want to go back to the topic of as to whether or not you have any update, or should we be talking about any discussions that were had, Marianne, with folks from EHS about policy? Or should we table that for another meeting?
So we can table the detailed discussion for our next meeting, and that's what we agreed. So Mark and Bartlett and I met with Amy and decided that we do need to update the language of the policy for the small grant application, and we are going to specifically address when an applicant has an interest in another home. So we put a few options out there. We want to leave it open to the judgment, in the discretion of the trust to approve or not, but we want to be a little bit more specific. We'll bring that proposal to our next meeting.
Okay, terrific. Thank you very much for taking the time to take the time to talk about that with Amy.
Yeah, it was a good discussion, very productive.
Terrific. Okay. So at this time, then, we are just awaiting for the folks from MHP. Since I thought we were going to be having some discussion, I recommended to Laura that she join around 6:45. So we have a few minutes in advance of that. But as soon as she and Shelley arrive, please go ahead and promote them, Maren.
Will do.
I think Angus had a question or comment.
Yeah, I just needed some more clarification. I wasn't quite clear about your comments. Is it in regards to repeat requests for the LRAP program, or was it on something else?
My comments were about the small grant program.
Oh, the small grants. Okay.
When an applicant has an interest, either ownership or otherwise, in a second property.
Oh, okay. Yep, that's pretty clear. So I just want, I guess we probably might discuss this later on as we go along, but I did receive documentation that Maren sent out almost right after our meeting last time regarding repeat applicants for the LRAP program. And I'm sure everybody received the same documents. In section 4B3 is evidence that the trust had addressed this in the past, and I just wanted that to be on record so that we don't keep going back and forth regarding these repeat applicants. As it seems, these are people who have nowhere else to go, and so we can't just ignore them. And certainly the language in this document suggests that the decision is at the discretion of the trust, whoever they are at that time. So I just wanted to bring attention to that. And I want to thank Maren for researching and bringing this back up. Thank you.
Very, very welcome. I'm always interested to hear, the next phase of the discussion. When the next question comes up based on new applications, etc.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Great. Well, thank you so much, Angus, for raising that point. And yes, as Marianne said, we'll have that on our June agenda item, which is just around the corner. Mm-hmm. So we can begin discussions if you would like, and then Laura can help answer questions. So has everyone had a chance to review the memo that Laura sent and the MHP loan program handout?
Yes.
Okay,
I did.
Okay.
In summaries, essentially, she's requesting three items: the survey, the septic, and the delineation. And I did get a notification about our butters sometime, but probably about a couple of weeks ago. So I'm suspecting that's in regards to all of this as well.
Actually, that notification was for work being done by the town on Foster Street.
Oh, okay.
And notification went to the trust because the trust owns property
Oh, okay.
adjacent to Foster Street. Yeah, but any application on our property would have similar notice to the abutters.
Right.
So maybe related to the Durkee property and the work that Laura's done. I think the question that keeps bubbling up for me is, just the large question of whether to move forward with this project, right? And I feel like Laura's done some amazing work and sharpened pencils and gotten super creative in how it could potentially work. I'm still questioning with all of these assumptions and some unknowns, what's the feasibility of this actually getting the attention and the interest of developers? And I feel like Laura's kind of guiding us. She wants us to answer that question, but I'd like her thoughts on that too. Like, if she were on the Affordable Housing Trust in her town, what would she be recommending?
right.
And Maren, I know you have a wealth of experience too. I'd love to get your thoughts on this. Just looking at the parameters for the property and a lot of the constraints we have, does it feel like a good project?
It's very exciting to be working on it. However, when I saw the handle of well over $600,000 for the development cost for each unit, that's an astounding amount.
Yeah. I feel like there are $2 million homes that are being built in town that cost less than that.
Mhm.
So one of the things that I wanted to share with everybody is I did have a conversation with Laura last Thursday to help provide context to some of the questions that have been asked around what you just said, Marianne. And she would not be even continuing to move forward with us if this particular project really wasn't realistic. She would be telling us if it wasn't realistic. So she will be happy to help answer questions tonight if you would like. With respect to the big question, as you said, Marianne, I actually have a bigger question for everybody. And that is, given our purpose, is everybody behind doing this project to actually create affordable housing? Because it almost feels to some degree like folks are looking for any reason not to do this project. I mean, are we all on board to actually create an affordable housing project at Durkee Farm?
Well, I certainly am. And to the cost issue, I think, Anna, when you reported on that site that you visited in Medway or someplace, that was a much bigger project. It was 40 some units, and the per unit cost when you added it up was well over $600,000. So, here we've got free land, but we have other constraints. So I think that it is going to be expensive, but I'm committed to seeing if we can make it work and getting housing there.
Well, from my perspective, in reviewing the memo, she outlined two pathways. One was through MOPL, the Opportunity Public Land Program, and the other was for the trust to go ahead and do pre-development work. If we went through the former, then obviously it looks like, based on what this memo suggests, then we could access funds to push the project through. But it seems to me as if we're following the second path, which is doing the pre-development work. Am I correct, or am I wrong in that? It's still not clear to me which pathway we are following, because that will determine whether we have funds to complete the project or not.
Right. So documents that she sent to us about the loan program would essentially do the work that is still needed to help answer some of the questions. So for example, previously we had talked about the fact that she said she needed to be able to understand, let me see, I'm trying to find it here. For example, the wetlands delineation, more information on the septic evaluation, and I had put those down as something that Bartlett, could take a look at. Well, all of that is extensive work based off what she said, and that's part of what the loan would go to pay for. It would go to pay for the engineering, any of the delineation that needs to be done, and to help narrow down the questions about exactly how many units and provide much more concrete information for us. So that's part of what would go into that $35,000.
So just to make everybody aware, Shelley Gehring and, I thought Laura was here. Hopefully she'll come back. And Linda.
Hi, Linda, welcome. Hi, Shelley, welcome.
Hi there.
So, I was very serious, by the way, about asking everybody that question. Are we here to actually create housing, or are we here to kick the can down the road? If this project is viable based on what MHP recommends, after further evaluation, we need to answer that question. Are we really in this to create housing? Bartlett has answered yes.
I believe we'll create housing, but certainly is it going to be affordable? And the process of creating the housing, going through the process, will we have enough funds to match what our commitments are? So that's where my questions are.
Okay. Sue, how about you?
Well, for me personally, I find the whole thing very overwhelming to even understand, but I am definitely in favor of creating affordable housing on that property, yes.
Okay.
I thought that was sort of our intent and our mission, and that's what we should be doing. It's a great location for it. We got the land. And yeah, the financial piece of it is a little overwhelming at the moment, but I think we have to go through with it. And I don't just mean that because we have to go through with it because somebody else expects us to. No, I mean, that's what we should be doing. I'm surprised you have the feeling that you have, Anna.
Well, I do have that feeling because I've seen pushback on this project in ways that really surprises me from our members. Everything from, well, let's just sell it and use the proceeds and we can go buy a different parcel of land.
Where?
Right. So
Sorry.
To me, it's sort of like wedding jitters. You're either going to get married or you're not, and that's where I think we are. Is if this project is one that we want to do, then we should continue to work with MHP with all of their expertise and resources to figure out how we can make this work. And as I said before, if MHP looks at everything and they say, yeah, this isn't going to be doable, they're going to tell us, and we can cut our losses from that perspective. So, Laura, welcome. We were just discussing the memo that you sent along with the handout on the loan, and I was asking everyone the question about, are we in this to actually create housing or to kick the can? Because some of the questions that have been asked seem to point that they're skittish about this particular project. So I think if we can start by asking some of the questions that folks have a burning desire to ask, that might help us in this process.
And I'll do my best to answer them.
Okay. All right. Mary Ann, would you like to go first?
I could. The question I asked Laura before you joined, and where I was really looking for, your input, was just the overall, the feasibility and the viability of the project. Anna had answered that and said, yes, you wouldn't be continuing if you didn't think it was viable. And then, Anna asked us if we're all on board, with creating affordable housing on the Durkee property. And I think we all are. No one's going to answer like, my preference is to kick the can down the road, right? That's not what we're here for. We're here for housing. But I also think as a trust, it's our responsibility, right, to do due diligence and make sure that we're making the best use of these funds that are entrusted to us, right? And I think if we weren't asking these questions, I think we wouldn't be doing our job. So that's I think the nature of the questions, Anna. It's not necessarily to prolong this, but just to make sure that we're putting our efforts into a project that will actually yield the desired results.
Well, I can say that right now it's really early to be making a lot of guesses, which I always do at the beginning, just to see if it's a $3 million gap, then I'm not going to go forward with it. It's not that. But we also don't know what subsidies are going to be around. So there's a lot of unknowns at this point. But the best thing we can do is get more information to narrow the, to understand how many bedrooms we can get on there, what that translates into units, and then what the goal is for those units. If it's everything below 80%, let's talk about it. If it's everything below 50%, it's probably not going to happen. We don't know anything yet because nothing in the federal budget, but all indications are that Section 8 is going to be reduced, if not, it was Trump's budget zeroed it out. That's not going to happen. There'd be developers and everything else, and landlords would would not sit still for that. So the engineering is important. The septic calculations are important. And getting a survey done is also important, and wetlands delineations if that needs it. Then we can see exactly how much land there is, how many units you could put on there, and get some evaluation of the barn to see a cost estimate on a square footage basis to turn that into apartments. Without that, we're just, kind of flying blind without that information.
Right.
And so what Laura shared was that when we first provided the documentation through the initial application, she thought that there might be enough information there, but there just really isn't. And so being able to go more in depth would help refine
Mhm.
a recommendation would be.
So at that point, and I think the estimate was 4 to 6 weeks. Is that how
Yeah.
long it would take to get those? Okay, so
Yeah.
then after 4 to 6 weeks, we'd have a better idea. And at that time, you could come back to us and say that either this is a great project and we should move forward, or maybe we'd be better off looking for another parcel.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, absolutely. And at that point, it would be, you know, if you were to use MHP's loan program, then the loan would be forgiven because it would be a infeasible project
Mhm.
in my
Yep.
estimation. So
Yep. No. Um, okay, that was my big question. I have a few more details, but I'd like to listen to everyone else first, see what other questions are out there.
okay.
Okay, who else would like to go?
I don't specifically have a question, but after Laura's answer to that, I think it's like a no-brainer that we go with it, the studies that we need. We shouldn't be making a decision before we have all the information, and we don't
Right.
have all the information.
So, thank you, Sue.
Mhm.
By the way, Laura, have you been in a meeting with Sue before?
Yes.
Okay,
Or, well, maybe it was ones I looked at.
okay. I
On the
know that
recording,
Sue has
sorry.
been absent for some of our meetings. I just want to make
I
sure.
know, sorry.
I think we've been
No
in a
need to
meeting.
apologize. We all have lives. Or we all want to have lives, I should say. So I'll share some of the questions that Mark had asked, and it may very well be that we just don't have enough information. So one of his questions was, is it viable as an affordable project?
So, as I said, if we can get the number of units that I base my estimates on, yes. If if we can't get the number of units, or if if there's something else that's holding, that's changing the numbers. I don't know. I can't say for sure that it would be affordable. It would be viable if we were to use the barn, if you were to use the barn. That's an outstanding question that I can't answer.
And now might be a good opportunity to share that Laura is going to be at their conference and will be headed toward Worcester and can pass through Littleton and meet to take a look at the barn. And so the date and time window would be on Tuesday, June 3rd, sometime around 2 o'clock. Is that correct?
Yeah.
So Bartlett, any chance that you would be available and we'd be able to grab that key to open it up?
I think so. Let me check my calendar, but I'm pretty sure I'm here. June 3rd. Yeah. I'm here. So I can, yes, indeed, I will get the key.
Great.
Right.
Bless you, Sue. So if anybody else would like to meet that day, could you please raise your hand, let me know, because we may need to post it if it's going to be more than 3 of us.
I'd love to, but I'll be camping, so I will not be able to. Sorry. It would be nice to meet you in person, Laura.
Yeah, I'd go camping with you rather than going to Worcester.
We could trade places.
I'm pretty sure that works for me.
Okay. All right. And I think Mark will want to go. So Maren, if we could please post a meeting for that particular date and around that time, that would be great.
Thanks.
All right. Mary Ann, do you want to go with another one of your questions?
Well, I was just thinking about the comment you made about the barn and whether or not that can be part of it. And I guess I was just trying to understand the options too. So I think the minimum number of units that we talked about before was 10. So if it turns out that we can't use the barn, then what configuration would we be looking at?
So doing 10 apartments in the surplus, in the vacant land.
Okay. And selling the barn and keeping that separate? Or,
I think it'll be up to you guys how, whether you sell the house and barn together, whether you need the land from the barn to make everything work, which you might, you know, doing some minor work so that it can be used for something, And again, I haven't seen it, so I'm guessing
yeah.
at that condition. That's
All right.
really,
So
So
it'll be a combination of you looking at it, evaluating it, plus the work that we're gonna do with the loan
yeah,
to get the three
Yeah.
different
yes.
the 3 different pieces of work done. Okay.
So is 10 sort of a magic number? I remember there being a number that kind of makes it work.
No.
No?
No, 10 isn't a magic number. But you did, the more the better. Let's
Mhm.
put it that way. So 8 didn't work. So 10 did by the skin of its teeth, but that was, not doing any one bedrooms. So
Mhm.
Which is what we had asked for, right? To have more family. But if somehow the calculations changed and 10 wasn't enough, there could be math that works with 12, but 2 of those being 1 bedrooms.
yes.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah.
If we'd be open, if the trust would be open to having a couple of 1 bedrooms.
Right. I mean, you had good reasons not to do 1 bedrooms, and
Yeah.
so that's why and when you put the request for proposals out, you'll have a preference for family units, a strong preference for family units, but you don't be so specific that you say 3 bedrooms, 2 bedrooms, and 3 1-bedrooms.
Yeah.
It's just really for estimation that I do it.
So another question is then, actually it's more of a statement. So based on what you've said, Laura, it seems like the barn is still to be determined as to whether or not it can be included. Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Mary Ann, do you have another question?
I think based on some of the opening comments by Laura to our first question, I think some of them we really need to wait till further work happens, right? To get the details, right? To understand more about the viability of the project.
Yeah. So it's too early to really understand how it should be marketed, whether it's a single family or a single project, I should say, with a house, a barn, apartments, or split into multiple ones. And Laura and I had talked that it's at this point also premature to be voting to separate out any of the components. So that's all part of what would be done after we have more information.
Yeah, and part of the engineering will be looking at, were you to split it, where's the best place to split it that's going to allow for parking and other things. So that's like step 2.
Others have other questions?
Not in that line.
Okay, do you have other types of questions?
Well, my question at this point I want to talk through, how we go about getting the wetland delineation and all the other questions that we have to answer. It seemed to me that we could do it on our own, or we could do it through MHP and get a package out of it. And what are the benefits for either one of those, and what direction should we take to get this stuff done?
Okay, so, I guess the advantage is, I use a, kind of all-purpose engineering firm that would do they have a septic, branch that would look at the, septic, surveyors and due diligence, looking at the easements. I talked to Anna about, an attorney to do the title so that we can connect the title and the easements. And then they have, planning designers, that would do, conceptual, site plans to show traffic flow, parking and buildings. And so it's kind of a,
One stop.
yeah. And then they also have cost estimators, because they also have a cost estimator. So it's one-stop shopping. And MHP hires them, MHP pays them. We don't have to go through procurement. And the amount is below what we'd have to anyway, but we can just decide who we want to do it. So it makes it easy. You don't see you don't have to do any invoicing or payments. We do it all. And then I project manage to make sure that they're doing on time, and
Right.
I've worked with them for a long time, so I don't really have to work the ones I'm thinking of. We use a few others, but the one that has the all-purpose, I give them a timeline, and they're very good at meeting that. And also they're very willing to do public, come to one of your meetings and explain what they've done or what they've found, if you'd like that.
That would be great.
It sounds easier than us getting all of those engineering firms individually, and probably faster.
Probably.
Yeah.
Probably.
Oh, and if you recall, Bartlett, last year when we had to go through the RFP process just to get somebody out there to do some work was very
Yeah.
time consuming. Yeah.
And you're all volunteers, except Maren, but that's not what she does. So we try and make it easy for you.
Along those lines of the Hopel, the loan. So one of Mark's other questions was, so if we have a loan,
Mhm.
what happens in terms of when the trust has to pay it back? So in other words, if we were to move forward, sign that application, all the work gets done, and then it's determined that no, nothing can happen here just because of X, Y, and Z. In that scenario, we have to pay back the loan. Or we
No,
don't.
no. The only time you have to pay back the loan is if you decide that you don't want to move forward, that you'd rather either the two times that it happened in the past, it was because the neighborhood put too much pressure on the town and they backed out and they had to pay it back. Pretty much that was both times. One of them had a citizens petition to a town meeting that overturned it. And they thought that by saying, well, then we're going to have to pay back the loan, town meeting would say, okay, never mind, but they didn't. So Um,
Got it.
so those are the two times. If there's any kind of what we call a fatal flaw, so if we find something in the engineering that, doesn't make it go forward, if it goes forward to RFP and no one responds, and people have taken have taken the RFP, developers have taken the RFP, we usually, call and say, hey, how come you didn't, do it? And if they say, well, it just is not gonna pencil out, it's just not feasible, then, you don't pay it back at that point either.
Okay.
So really the only time is if it's your choice not to do it, not the choice that, it's not gonna work.
Great. Thank you. So that's very good to hear. Thank you.
You're
It makes it pretty convenient and I think all encompassing, one-stop shop, like Bartlett said. And so I did discuss the application process with town administrator Duggan, and he is willing to write a letter of support from the town for this project if the trustees vote yes to move forward with that application. So
Oh, that's nice.
So I think Mark's other question is around what steps can the trust take prior to issuing an RFP to make the process more likely to be successful?
So I think we take the information that we will be gathering, put together an RFP that's attractive to developers. We can't really go out and ask developers to bid on it. But we can, send them notification that the request for proposal is gonna be released on such and such a day, and how to get it if they don't already know. And then, I think it's just, listening to what the engineers have to say. And then seeing, looking at the options out there and yeah, I think just keep moving forward. We can be refining some of the draft, which I know Bartlett sent some suggestions already, to things that can be included that, that don't have to be, that we don't have to wait for the engineering to refine some of the things that, the site description and, sometimes we do a little bit of history on the town or, just those kinds of things, are helpful to put your stamp on it.
Hey, Laura, I think one of the ideas you had for lowering cost of the construction was to use modular.
Mhm.
And we had a visit at Lab 9, as I think we mentioned last time, and they're eager to have some of us tour their project that's close to completion in Somerville. Is there anything that we should be doing working with them, or is that premature to engage them on this project?
Yeah, it's premature. And it would be, they probably would just be the contractor, not the general.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I would, it's fine to go look at everything because we toured Reframe, which is in Littleton also. And I've toured a couple of them, but I think we just will be clear in the request for proposals that you're open to modular,
Okay.
construction.
Reframe is another modular based in Littleton?
Yeah.
I think isn't it Andover?
Oh, is it Andover?
I think it's Andover.
Okay.
Pretty sure it's Andover.
Because Triumph is here in Littleton, but they
Right.
Yeah.
mainly do not permanent housing, more temporary trailers in their schools.
They do have a line that they offer to sell of modular houses.
I think it's not their main business, though.
No, it's not.
Yeah.
Oh, let's see.
Well, to that point that Marianne just made, they also reached out to me and asked whether or not they could share with us, with the trust, the quote, small affordable building prototype that they've developed. So is that something that, Laura, you would be interested in seeing?
Yeah, I mean, you can look at what they're doing. That's not, I think it's just having any specific conversations around this project. And I should tell you that, well, typically with, well, it won't make any difference for this one because you're not doing the development, so never mind.
Mhm.
Um,
Well,
for
I'm
housing,
heeding- I'm heeding the warning about, not chatting with any developer. I just didn't know if they would be perceived as part of that same group. If they have something to share about small affordable housing in general.
Yeah, I think that's okay. They're because they wouldn't be, I mean, they may be partnering with a general, but they're not the ones that go get the subsidies and they don't own them forever. They just build them,
Yeah.
So they're like the contractors. The developer, is the one who usually has the balance sheet and the contacts and the wherewithal to get the subsidies that are needed, and then they own them, their rental units, whereas the modular company is in and out.
Okay. Given that you're going to be in Littleton, is that something that you would be interested in spending, 30 minutes with them, or you don't think that's possible for next week?
Yeah, I don't think it's possible, and I probably have to go to Townsend after you, so.
You're going to be traveling lady. All right.
Yeah,
So,
if I'm gonna be up that way.
Marianne, maybe you and I can go and take a look at what their small model looks like.
Yeah, I'd like to see that.
All right.
And
So-
yeah, we can also talk. I told you that my contacts at Delbrook who've had some good experience working with Lab 9. So
Delbrook does a lot of affordable housing development.
have you worked with them, Laura?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. They're the contractors. They're not the developers usually. They're the contractors.
Yeah.
But they do almost everything here on the Cape, so.
The JKS.
Yeah, JKS.
So,
I know Mark has asked about the per unit cost for affordable units. And honestly, it really varies what should the cost be, and it varies especially on the development size. So for instance, one company is doing a large project, about over 100 units, and they're coming in at like 345,000 a unit, which is really low. The 10 and 12 or 10 to 15 units are usually at least 600,000 a unit. And state public housing redevelopment is coming in at like 900,000 a unit.
Whoa.
Whoa. And some $1 million. they're trying to keep it under $1 million, so they're like 990. So,
Wow.
yeah, it's wild.
But that's because it's a state thing and they're paying, it's filed sub bid and, all that wage stuff.
It's prevailing wage, but they don't have
Yeah.
to do filed sub bids.
Oh, okay.
They have a waiver on redevelopment. Usually they're doing redevelopment and they're adding additional units and
Mhm.
so they have to demolish what's there. So there's demolition.
Oh.
Because they're all old, there's remediate, there's hazardous waste removal.
Asbestos, lead paint.
And usually site work is a lot to get reconfigured the development. So there's a lot of reasons why it's that much, but people it's hard to fathom that much for a.
But what about building new, the units in a meadow on new land? That's not going to be $1 million. That's got to be.
No, that's not $1 million. That
Would be, if it's a small project, it would be in the same 600,000 range.
in the 600. They're trying to, EOHLC would like to see things below 700. They were below 4, then below 5, then below 6,
Right.
and now they're kind of below 7. And they're looking at costs, but and where,
Right.
whether it's regulation or other things, what's the cause of it going up so much? Of course, there's been difficulties getting certain products, so things are taking longer.
Right.
Just for switches, it's like 6 months. So if you don't order them a year before you need them,
Yeah.
you don't get them. So, and then, utility hookups has been tough. So,
Right.
and every time you have to wait a month for something to ching.
Right. Okay.
All right.
So, let's see. So I guess where we are then is, do we have any other further questions from any member or Maren?
Nothing from me at this time. I guess just what would be next steps to move forward with the loan.
I did want to bring in Linda Stein to just give us a quick update as to what happened at town meeting, because that particular Article 26 benefits Durkee Farmhouse if we proceed. So Linda, did you want to just share a little bit about that?
Sure. So there was no discussion of the article at town meeting. It just went right through. The article simply requested funds for, $7,500 funds for a historic preservation consultant that would help the historical commission if there is historical preservation for the house and or barn. She would help us develop the preservation restrictions. She would hold a couple of meetings with the Affordable Housing Trust as needed, architects as needed. So that's really, can you hear me?
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
Yes.
I lost my internet for a minute. So that's really all it is.
Okay.
Yeah.
So Laura and Shelley, that way I just want to make sure that you knew that that was available, so that if we proceed and this application gets accepted, then know that there's additional funding specifically for the preservation piece. For the
Documenting.
For documenting it.
Documenting, yeah. Okay. That's good.
So I think what we've heard tonight then is that this Hopel loan would help to answer questions that unless we were to back out ourselves as a town that we would not have to repay it. The timing on the work would be about 4 to 6 weeks. And then an issuance of the RFP could be done by the end of what, August? Is that about?
Yeah, I think August to September, I think definitely, assuming everyone, we can meet in the summer. Yes, I just want to clarify that the trust doesn't have to pay it back, but any developer that is awarded the price, it would be put in the RFP that the minimum price would be whatever you were looking for and plus the whatever we've spent. So it gets paid and then it gets paid at construction loan closing. And I just want to make sure that was clear.
But that's all work that the developer would have to do or get done, so he would expect that
Yeah,
is
there's
included.
there's
Yeah.
no squabbles about that. No,
It's just already done as far as,
right.
okay.
All right. So is there anything else that we should know about before we take a vote on this as to whether to submit the Hopewell grant application, Laura or Shelley?
No, and once the application's received, it's all electronic. We then assign it. Obviously, it would be Shelley and I would get assigned it, and you get an award letter. And in the meantime, I'd be getting a proposal from the engineering firm and their Bohler, Bohler. And I'd get a proposal from them for the work, and so we'll be ready to contract soon as possible. Just takes a little bit to get through legal, but
So we'd have a contract in place on Friday this week.
I said it has to go through legal.
Oh, so,
Not on a holiday week, Bartlett.
Yeah, it doesn't
Sorry.
take long, but as long as and it depends whether it's not a lot of paperwork, but it usually takes a week anyway.
okay.
All right. Well, with no further discussion, then is there a motion to move forward?
I'll make a motion to move forward.
I second.
Okay, to move forward to submit a Hopewell
Submit
grant.
the grant application, what we've been talking about.
Okay, thank you. All right, let's take a vote on that. Mary Ann,
Yes.
Angus,
Yes.
Bartlett,
Yes,
Sue,
Yes.
and Anna's a yes. Okay, so
Good
thank
job.
you. So we will proceed to submit that application then, and I'll get a letter from the town administrator to attach with it. And Laura, you had said that you have quite a bit of the documents that we already have, but I should still attach them anyway.
No, you don't have to attach because I have them in the other application, so
Okay.
it's fine.
All right. Great. So thank you, Shelley and Laura, for your time coming in to meet with us specifically. We've really tried to advance this project as quickly as we can, and you've been very helpful in being flexible with your time.
You're welcome, and I'm looking forward to seeing you next week.
Yes. So it's weird to think it's already June next
I
week.
know.
What happened to May? And members, thank you also very, very much for your commitment to wanting to see this through and for continuing to meet not just once, but twice a month. And so if we have a little bit of a reprieve, then, we only need to meet at our regular meeting instead of twice a month. But so our next meeting will be, I believe, Tuesday, June 17th. Is that correct, Maureen?
Yeah, that's what I had penciled in.
Okay. All right. Great.
I know
All right.
I'm away then, so just so you know.
Yeah, we don't plan to have you on the agenda then.
So,
Okay,
all right, Laura, I'm going to meet you at the barn on June 3rd at 1 o'clock. Is that correct?
2:00.
2 o'clock.
2:00.
All right.
Yeah.
1
Yeah, 'cause
o'clock will
it's
get
gonna
me.
take it's gonna take about an hour for me to get there, so.
Okay.
Yeah.
All
We
right, 2
did say
o'clock.
2, right, Anna?
2, yes, 2 o'clock.
Yeah, that's
Try
All
right.
right,
as well,
that'll
but
give me an hour to open the door.
all right.
Okay.
And Maren, thank you very much for posting that meeting. So that way, if more of us are there, then, yeah. And Linda, as always, you're welcome to attend if you want to get out into the sunshine.
Thank you. I probably won't. I've seen it, but thank you.
Okay. All right. Well, thank you, everyone. Have a good rest of your evening.
Good night.
Thank you.
You
Good night.
too.
Thank you.